Before I start this video, I want to establish what this video could have been, or maybe what some expect. I was originally going to make a standard video essay analyzing Berserk. Berserk is a story I love more than any other, and more specifically the Golden Age arc, in which I believe to be the greatest bit of fiction ever produced. Here's the thing though, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Berserk is a story adored by so many people all over the world, and thus, many people have made video essays on it. Nearly all that has been said about it has been said, but despite this, I still wanted to make a video essay on Berserk. Something to show my appreciation to it and to the late author of it, Kentaro Miura. I could have made a 3-hour video analyzing Berserk, but I can't do that. It wasn't personal enough, so instead I just want to tell a story. My experience with Berserk. Berserk being the greatest story ever to be told on this planet. It was the summer between my 7th and 8th grade, and I wasn't doing well. I hung around people who did so many awful things. Make fun of me in nearly every turn, harass and ridicule for the sake of a so-called joke. It was the fun thing to do in the group, combined with also making fun of other people. If you're watching this, I'm sorry, Ben. I wasn't any better than those friends. Sure, they made fun of me, but at the very least, it gave me people to talk to. Due to me being on the spectrum and my own upbringing, being friends with people was hard. So I saw this friend group as a place to belong. I thought it was either fit in or be left alone. The desire to not be lonely haunted me and controlled nearly every action I did back then. I said things I regret and did things that I regret. The leader of the group always forced me to do things I didn't want to do. I started to lose myself and my identity. I was cut away from the group and left to rot by myself just a few days before my 8th grade started. The first day of school was uncomfortable. I violently outbursted at my group of friends for cutting ties with me and made a big scene. I couldn't control myself, and after being told enough times to go kill myself, I don't know who wouldn't. I didn't tell anybody what happened. I tried to remain strong, but it failed. However, there was one thing at the end of school, a thing that changed my entire life. My neighbors would pick me up nearly every day of school. And sometimes they like to go get food, and sometimes do other things. The first day of school, they wanted to go visit the public library. And at the time, I was a big comics and anime fan. So the first thing I did after arriving at the library was look for Batman comics. However, there was a guy there who was sitting down near the section. I asked him what Batman comics he'd recommend, and from there we started a long conversation about comics. We exchanged opinions and simply talked about the things that we liked. I mentioned that I liked anime earlier, but not manga. At the time, I only really saw stuff like Attack on Titan, Death Note, and JoJo. Manga, from an outsider's perspective, seemed weird. I mean, come on. It was right to left, and it was in black and white. Why would it not be weird? But even then, I just listened to him. I mean, due to the age gap, we only talked about stuff like One Piece and Naruto, which admittedly I had no interest in watching the anime for it, but maybe I did want to read the manga. Maybe I prefer reading it. Everything changed when I asked if he read Berserk. I only heard about it by name and knew people liked it a lot, and without hesitation, he led me to a special place in the library for mature comics and pointed at the copies of Berserk, and there were exactly 12, I remember. My neighbors were in a rush to leave the library, so I didn't talk much about Berserk with the guy. I simply put 5 of the volumes in my bag and went to go check it out. As I left the library and in the car home, I felt like crying. I turned to the first page and was immediately greeted by a guy's bare ass and didn't want to seem weird in front of the neighbors who were also in the car, so I closed the book. I still think to this day that the first panel of Berserk is really stupid and not representatory of it. Um, in fact, the first 3.5 volumes to my edgy 13-year-old brain were awesome, but in hindsight, they weren't what Berserk was. However, by the third volume, the Golden Age begins opening up Berserk's true potential. I said I didn't want to analyze Berserk, but I have to for just one scene. The beginning of the Berserk Golden Age was a panel of a tree in which each branch hung corpses, with one corpse having its innards on the outside, with a lonely baby on the dirty ground, left to rot. We soon see a group of mercenaries on horseback walking by, and notice how none of them notice the baby. The one who notices them is a woman named Shizu, the only woman a part of the group. Shizu immediately goes to pick up the baby and try to comfort it. Another mercenary mentions that Shizu has a miscarriage with the leader of the group, Gambino. Gambino tries to carry Shizu away, telling her the baby is already dead. Before long, the baby starts crying, and Gambino allows her to keep it. Mercenaries talk about how the baby is a bad omen and how lucky it will be. What I love about this intro is how subtle the world building is. There isn't some over-the-top spectacle to emphasize the cruelty, but rather these subtle pages that showcase the average person in this world's actions. The general consensus of the group was to abandon the baby, let it die. Even when Gambino allows Shizu to keep it, he talks bad about the baby immediately. It's sad and disheartening to see the imagery of hung corpses and a baby left on the ground to rot, but it tells everything you need to know about the cruelty of Berserk without even being a big spectacle. Some of you may ask after that, why is Berserk a comfort story? Why did this depressing environment help your mental state? Keep these questions in the back of your mind when I say that Berserk has all of the worst things about humanity in it. Murder, pedophilia, cannibalism, rape, and probably much more I'm forgetting. On the surface, you might question what makes this story mean anything. How can a story be this horrible, yet still mean something? It's because Guts, the main character, is someone who fights all of this. Guts suffers basically everything a character can suffer through over the period of his life. However, no matter what, he had hope. He never gave up. He always moved forwards. He never stopped moving. He kept hope, and he'd help others even when unnecessary. He's the ultimate virtuous hero who goes out of his way to help others and protect other people. He's your Superman that exists despite having horrible things happen to him. There's a lot of little things over the series that flesh him out too, but I don't want to get into spoiler territory. So why is Guts my favorite character of all fiction? What is his personal relation to me? The aspect of Guts' character that hit the hardest was how he dealt with loneliness. I hated the concept of being alone. So did Guts. From the beginning, he was always looking to get his father figure Gambino's attention, make up to everyone in the Band of the Hawk, or just helping random people. Guts may have a rough exterior, but that's to illustrate that exterior doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people and the qualities you show. That is what I started doing, and it worked. I started to make up with the friends I hurt. I started to develop new friends rather than stick to the old ones that hurt me. Guts, early on, learns to open up to the people around him, and that's what I did. Even when Guts was lonely past the Golden Age arc, he would still grow and make connections with new people. What I learned from Guts was to value who you are on the inside, value your friends, evaluate people based on better standards, and how to deal with loneliness. This is how a story with all the worst things of humanity helped me. Most importantly, I learned perseverance, which is, to date, the most valuable skill in my life. Guts, once again, never gave up, and neither will I. This was many years ago. I can't tell you if I'd still be on this earth if it wasn't for Berserk. A story that never tried to comfort me, but rather teach me to improve. Recently, I suffered a traumatic event that was built up by other factors in my life. I started to forget those lessons I learned from Berserk. I lost my perseverance and started to overthink about the possible negative future rather than just simply continuing on with life and see what's on the end of the road. I just couldn't. During my depressive episode, Berserk wasn't on my mind. I was looking for things to comfort me and help combat my sadness. And that is where I tried to watch my favorite comedy movie, Kung Fu Hustle. And, well, yeah, I laughed a few times, sure, but afterwards I didn't think about it. I then watched one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, Kota Ibushi, wrestle a goddamn sex doll. And sure, I laughed at the time, but I don't know how much it helped. I started listening to heavy music, hoping it could distract me, and it didn't work. I even tried listening to Guts' theme, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I nearly broke down. My last option was to revisit Berserk, and I was immediately reminded why Berserk helped me in the first place. History repeated itself all over again 5 years later. I don't know how much I can speak for other people, but this is why Berserk is impactful. A few years back, Twitter made a big fuss about the content of Berserk, and it always bugged me. Out of context, it looks bad, but it's mature content, and the exploration of it can make a great story. And Berserk rarely tries to shock you in a way to scare you. It shocks you to get you to realize the state of the world in Berserk. Berserk is simply just a metaphor for living life. And that, I must thank Kentaro Miura. He created my favorite story ever made, and I love him for that. Rest in peace to the greatest storyteller ever told. Thank you.
Show you now.